So at Wireframe Ventures, we're focused on working with founders who are using technology to solve some of the most important critical problems in society. We really focus broadly on human health and sustainability, and that includes areas like energy and agriculture, water, and transportation, kind of the big physical world industries that we all rely on, and where technology is really beginning to have a transformative impact. The problems that I most wish innovation could solve, there's a whole range. And because we invest across human health and sustainability, an easy and obvious one is to say, if innovation and technology could simply solve climate, wouldn't that be wonderful? The reality is that there's a number of different ways to have an impact and to begin to address environmental or sustainability issues with technology. So when I think about some of the challenges which seem to be a little bit more intractable, on the human health side, you start to look at areas like infectious disease and like drug resistance as kind of big critical areas that have broad impact across the global population. And I think that when we think about areas in the environment, clearly there's huge issues with waste and plastics and things that are not easy solutions for technology. So I wish there was easy technical solutions to some of these big systemic issues. As seed stage investors, we're very focused on product and on the team's ability to start with something and then build a business. And so usually that means you can't tackle systemic challenges at once. You're starting with something that's a bit more focused and you hope that it can grow and kind of have an amplified impact over time. Yeah, we went through a decade ago, we went through this clean tech bubble. And I think there definitely was a bubble because you had every generalist VC deciding to deploy capital in a whole range of startups that probably in retrospect didn't make sense. And so you had a huge washout after this wave of clean tech. And I think we're in a place now where there's a lot of interesting new models that are being developed. And many of these are still experiments in terms of how we fund innovation. But the world has definitely changed, and I think it's changed in some really exciting ways. So if you think about renewables as an example, no one a decade ago would have expected the fully installed cost of solar to be $1 a watt. People, I think, are still surprised at how quickly batteries are going down kind of the cost curve. And so if you think about some of the core ingredients and enablers for a lot of new interesting innovation, I think we're in a very interesting place to fund companies that are doing work in energy and in resources, because you have those elements, and then you also have just the cost of sensing and computing and connectivity, which has become really pervasive in all of our lives personally, and now is starting to become pervasive in these sectors, which opens up a whole additional set of opportunities. At Wireframe Ventures, we don't start with the technology that we want to invest in and focus so much on the technology themes as we do on kind of the market problems. So we're investors in companies that are using marketplace models or software innovation, but we're also investors in hard tech companies that are using kind of more fundamental innovations, so long as they can be developed fairly rapidly and brought to market. So when we get excited about a startup, it's not necessarily just because the technology toolkit that they're bringing, but the way that they're applying it to market. So a lot of the same cutting edge technology that people are talking about, whether it's machine learning or robotics or synthetic biology, the kind of digitization of traditional industries, we get excited about all of that. The key piece is how people are applying those technologies to solve a big, meaningful problem. So if you're an MBA graduating today, I think the exciting thing about sustainability is that it is a very broad spectrum of opportunities. There's, I think, a realization among the largest corporations in energy and agriculture and transportation that the world is changing and that they need to figure out how to innovate. So there are a lot of roles at those large companies to figure out the path for those companies forward. But there's also a lot of work in the startup community. So I think a decade ago, when you thought about sustainability, most people would have thought about clean tech. They would have thought about renewables or maybe the built environment. Today, those are still really exciting opportunities, but there's equally exciting opportunities when you think about logistics and transportation, when you think about packaging, when you think about water and agriculture. So what we've seen is that there's entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs who are figuring out how to deploy technology in all these legacy physical world industries in really compelling, novel ways. And those are great opportunities if you want to take a little bit more risk and join something earlier to get involved even in the startup arena after business school.